Hi there. My name is Kay Moon, and I'm a twin flame channel and Western astrologer. And this is a video about the full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse taking place on October 28th at 4:15 p.m. If you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, please check a time zone converter for a local time. A couple quick announcements before we get into this lovely lightworker energy update. Star School, for those of you who've been wanting to learn astrology with me, will open in November. This year's Star School will include a private mentorship option that's application only for those of you who would like to learn how to run the business of astrology. Limited spots are available. You will need to know some astrology to be able to join, and more details are coming. I'm also booking readings in the month of November, and I'm really excited to chat about what to expect and how to prepare for 2024 and what to expect for the end of 2023. We're moving into a closing season where I guess we could call it a season of great consequence, is the best way I would describe it. We'll talk about what this means in a minute, but know that the decisions that we make now are going to have some very long-lasting impacts going forward. And so if you need some support navigating any decisions, making sure they're aligned with your higher self, if you're in a conundrum, book with me now, as the decisions that we make now will really set us up to take the best advantage of some very important manifestation energy in the spring of 2024. If you're new, welcome. Love ya. Thanks for subscribing. We have at the end of every Lightworker Energy Update video something called First Look, where I will look ahead at the energies coming at the next lunar update 2 weeks from today and inform you of my first impressions based on how the energy is unfolding. So stick around till the end for First Look. All right, let us get into this lunar eclipse, full moon in Taurus. It's a very important one. Here is our full moon at the 5th degree of Taurus, opposite the sun at the 5th degree of Scorpio. And we've got some very important aspects here. We've got in opposition to Haumea, the creation goddess from the moon, opposition to Mercury and Mars, all conjunct the sun here in Scorpio. We've got a trine to Juno in Virgo. The sun is at the 5th degree of Earth sign Taurus. Juno is at the 4th degree of Earth sign Virgo, bringing her into the conversation. Sextile to Vesta here at the 7th degree of Cancer, a square here to Pholus in Capricorn, and a square to an Aquarius Chariklo here, and a conjunction to Jupiter in Taurus. This is some supremely important energy for the year, and this energy really reads as a major closing out of a cycle. Whenever there are planets like we have here in opposition to the moon, we get revelation about where we stand emotionally about something, and revelation about where we're emotionally completing a cycle when it's an eclipse, in particular, a lunar eclipse. And so we are getting that revelation now. And this energy has been in effect for, I'd say, the last 90 days. There's been a steady build over the last 90 days around what's closing, what's opening. Remember, we just had a solar eclipse 14 days before this. So there's been an opening and a closing and overlap. But this closing has, in this particular lunar eclipse, is the closing of a cycle where we've been emotionally invested. We've got Vesta and Cancer here, emotionally invested, likely in a partnership with Juno and Virgo. In particular, with Juno and Virgo, a pattern of investment or commitment or way of relating that may have been undervaluing to ourselves. And that's the Taurian component. Taurus represents a lot of our values or undervaluing our desires and not investing in them. Instead, maybe investing in other people's dreams and desires. That patterning is coming to an end. There would be with this maybe a pattern of counting yourself out or being in some sort of agreement with the idea that you don't get to have your desires fulfilled. You have to live in less than, or you have to live in lack or unfulfillment. This patterning that may have been a part of an older agreement, an agreement you made with yourself. I won't play that big because that's how bad things happen. Or with life, I won't, try to put myself out there, or I won't go for love because whenever I go for love, it always blows up in my face. Or agreements with God. God, if you just keep my family safe, then I will always put up with a job that I hate. Or agreement with others, right? There's some sort of older agreement with self, life, God, or others, or part of a belief system. Given the Mercury-Mars combination here, that's some belief systems going on with Haumea in connection, where we've got these belief systems that somehow compromise us. And this is now being invited to wrap up, come to a close. Less is not your life. And where you've been living under agreement for less love, counting yourself out by not getting on the dance floor, sitting on the sidelines, not making your feelings known, not trusting your heart to guide you, believing limiting stories in love based on your past, childhood, things you saw between your parents growing up. This is a closing out of all of that. Likewise, it's also a closing out of all old financial patterns because Taurus here deals with both things of value, love and money. Taurus is Venusian governed. You could even say that a co-ruler to Taurus would be Juno. If you understand Juno's mythology, you understand why she's affiliated with Taurus. But here we're also seeing a closing out of patterns of under-earning, financial mismanagement, or overindulgence or overspending. As an employer, this might be the mismanagement of resources or overlooking their dispensation, not operating with an eye to value in the marketplace and the needs of those served, but instead being exclusively and solely focused on what feels good to you and you alone, or really treating the business like it ought to be an ATM machine instead of really focusing on the value you deliver, thinking the business will just come to you without you being engaged in the conversation of knowing your worth and value in a changed economic marketplace and being able to stand for that and speak to that, not raising your rates to keep up with the rising cost of living in a post-pandemic world. As 2 years ago was when this cycle really began. This is when we really started to see inflation occur. This is when the Taurus-Scorpio Eclipse cycle opened. This eclipse cycle is now coming to a close. In particular, all of this is about closing out a cycle of disempowering patterns around love and money. In particular, value and worth related patterns that have been toxic. For some, these patterns will be invisible, and this cycle will reinforce toxicity if we're unaware. Okay. that there could be, one of these agreements going on. One of the things I'm seeing thematically, like across the board in my client sessions, is a sense of fatigue. And that fatigue is really coming from like repressed awareness and really the collective kind of being in denial in certain ways around where we've got some imbalanced power dynamics going on. And in addition to that, I'm also seeing a lot of clients kind of come into session, explain a pattern that's not working in their life. And then we explore what the planets are really showing in their chart for where the path of evolution and growth is, them having this aha moment that they have been participating or in agreement with the pattern of toxicity in a blind spot. So, for example, I spoke with a client recently, and this is going to be more of a story time kind of lunar eclipse because stories really help us learn and integrate. One of the clients that I had recently, she's been a mom, she's now a grandma. She wanted, and early on as a young mom, she made agreement with God and she said, look, God, as long as you keep me and my girls fed and safe, I will not bring anyone into the picture that could potentially harm them. Because she saw kind of, the state of the world and, people taking advantage of young moms and young girls. And she didn't want to put her children or expose her children to potential harm or danger. So she went all of her young children's adult life or young childhood, no dating, 20 years. One of her children then had new children, and that child needed help raising her grandchildren. Another 7 or 8 years went by, no children or no dating for her. So now we're at the 30-year mark. And so in the conversation, her revelation was that, like my counterpart's not paying attention. The man I'm in love with is kind of checked out, opted out. And the mirror there was that she had closed off the door entirely to this part of herself, this part of her world. And so through the session, the clarity came on board. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater here. That connection may actually evolve and shift once you actually really open up to and cancel out this promise you made that it either has to be your kids or you. You have strong intuition in your chart. I can see it very clearly. You can trust that intuition. You can tell when a person just isn't good for you or your family or the people you love. You can feel it. She was like, you're right. That is what has made me good at my job. She works in one of the helping professions. And I said, okay, so it's time for us to cancel out this old agreement where your love life takes a back seat to your kids' needs. This new step has to be about both and. This is a step where you get to have it all. That was a big revelation for her. I said, whatever's happening in the connection with the counterpart, that'll get resolved on its own. But for right now, we need to focus on just opening the door for you feeling safe to let love in again. How about we just start there? So that was a big aha moment. And I'm so proud and inspired and like cheering for her that she, like, after 30 years, she got this breakthrough. Now she's ready to move forward in life. Her kids may still need her. Her grandkids may still need her. But they will no longer, because she's changing, that whatever their needs are will no longer come second to her own need for companionship and for love and for connection. Or they will no longer come before that. Her need for companionship will no longer come second. It'll have to be both and going forward. And so these are the kinds of breakthroughs, revelations, and insights that we are receiving through this full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse. The totality of the Scorpio Taurus eclipse cycle has been that it has been a closing heavy cycle. And I just want to show you guys what I mean by that. I'll bring up the table of eclipses here and show you when this eclipse cycle began and how it's unfolded. Since I didn't do an eclipse video on it, let's just reshare the screen. Here we go. We started this back in 2021, I believe. So no, 2020. Yep, it was 2021. So in 2021, in November, we had the first eclipse in Taurus, and it was a lunar eclipse. Keep an eye here on 2022. Had a lunar eclipse, another lunar eclipse, one in Scorpio, one in Taurus. We had 2 solar eclipses. But then let's just clear this and see how the process progressed. Have a look here. Then in 2023 on this axis, we had another lunar eclipse in Scorpio back in May and another lunar eclipse in Taurus now in October. So out of 6 eclipses, 4 of them have been lunar eclipses. Lunar eclipses only happen on full moons. So full moons are completions and culminations and endings. And we have one every month. But then you add a lunar eclipse on top of that, it's an amplified closing, an expanded completion. And because the Taurus-Scorpio eclipse cycle was closing heavy, we had a lot of endings going through this eclipse cycle because we had the south node, which also represents closings and completions, moving through the sign of closings and completions. That's Scorpio. So it was like I would say maybe a 1.5 year kind of detoxification period where there's been lots of release, lots of ending, lots of closing, lots of transition and transformation. As we all stepped in and leaned into our north node collectively, it has been in Taurus, it is now in Aries. It's been all about valuing ourselves and placing ourselves in places with people who value us. So there's been major transitions in the world of people because there have been transitions in the world of self in this eclipse cycle. As we've moved on into the Aries-Libra eclipse cycle, that is only echoed because Aries and Libra deal with our relationship to self, Aries, and then our relationship in collaboration, Libra. The North Node throughout all of this has really been pushing us to step into greater value of ourselves. And as this Scorpio Taurus eclipse cycle has its last eclipse, like it's like breathing its last gasp. There is an understanding here that the choices that we make here, we won't see the North Node in Taurus for another 18 years, won't be on this axis for another 9. The next time we have this energy on this axis, the North Node will be in Scorpio. This is really signaling itself as a moment of great consequence, a moment of a tipping point where we are either going to loop in because Scorpio deals with resurrection cycles. We're either going to lock into a redundant cycle, meaning something will end only for the same thing to unfold in a new iteration. You ever had the feeling like, maybe you broke up with an ex, but then you met somebody just like them, and it's like dang, you're the same person and I'm dealing with the same situation in a different body. It's because we didn't actually learn what we were supposed to learn with the ex, right? We didn't close out that cycle. So life just was like, oh, okay, that's cute. You think you can escape your lesson? How about we give it to you again? Maybe this time even a little bit louder. Because Scorpio deals with cycles in that way, ending, afterlife integration, new beginning. It's the resurrection sign. So, with this, as we have the completion of that entire eclipse cycle, and we have this closing full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse, either we're stepping into value or we're repeating a cycle here. And this is why this time can feel so heavy to so many of us, because there's a demand in this energy for our evolution. And so if you're feeling really tired or heavy or fatigued, or like collective energy is weighing you down, some of this has to do with, the heaviness of needing to change or create change in density. We all know how intense it is to kind of be here on earth, period. But moving through density, it's like moving through mud, needing to like build a house while you're also, you're knee deep in mud. We're moving a little bit slower. It's a little bit heavier. It will get lighter, I promise, once Pluto moves all the way into Aquarius. It's coming up in January, but we have this last little bit of Pluto in Capricorn, Pluto being the ruling sign of where the Sun, Haumea, Mercury, and Mars all are here in Scorpio. Pluto's really handing it to us because it's in an earth sign. That's a density sign. Pluto's really saying, I'm going to need you to deal with the third dimension more directly. Like, we're not going to be able to kind of chant and jump or like meditate and leap with this. We actually got to put our hands in the clay as divine creator beings, incarnate and make the shifts ourselves to really stand in our power and really confront and release anything that has made us afraid to own our power. This is the moment when we're being invited to release these things. So I share all of this with you so you can understand. I spoke to 3 different people today. And 3, was it last Friday? Like, as the closer we're getting to this eclipse, the more and more people are saying, okay, I'm so tired or I'm so moody and I can't figure out why. Like, is this going to end soon? And I'm like, yes, there's a signaling here for some change in our individual lives with this. And in addition to that, there's the collective and the collective's own like navigation of this energy. So we're all picking up on all of it. Okay. If you need any support navigating this for yourself, you're not seeing the blind spot, but you're clear that there's some repetitive patterns, you're ready to close them out. Now is a perfect time to jump on my calendar and get a reading. Booking readings in November, because this eclipse happens on October 28th and the energy is very active all the way through November 28th, December 28th to January 28th. The sooner you can get clear about the pattern and make the change, the faster your life gets out of the heaviness, the murk, the density of feeling weighed down by it all. So if you want to book some time, my link is in the description box. I'm at kmoonastro.com. For what we're looking at for all of this, I strongly have been recommending people be kind to themselves and give themselves a full hour, because of the way these eclipse cycles are kind of interlocking and overlapping, moving through the entire cycle so you can see how this is supposed to progress for you and where you need to be and by when, so you can take advantage of the energy instead of the energy kind of pushing you around, is going to help. A half an hour, it's enough time to talk about now, but it's not enough time to really talk about where and how this unfolds in the future. And it's all connected. So if you can invest in the 1 hour for the session and really look at the full cycle into 2024, I strongly recommend it at this time. I'll always only tell you what you need. And if you need a half hour, those of you who've been on the channel long enough, I'll tell you, you only really need a half hour to look at this. Only book a half hour. That's your only question. But for this, it's such a time of transition, transformation. It's a breaking point. And the decisions we make now, like I said, have significant consequences. So if you can give yourself the hour, please do. Okay. Any place, here's the deal with Scorpio. Scorpio specifically deals with some of the emotional quagmire that we as humans would rather not have to face. Fear being primary and chief among those things, but also shame and guilt and embarrassment, things that we'd rather kind of tuck away or hide behind the curtain. Scorpio season really has a way of bringing it out, and this eclipse in particular is really going to bring it out for us. Those relationships, behaviors, and activities where there has been, a sense of disempowerment or a sense of shame, they may come to an end now, or they may be brought to the surface for resolution and closure, or solutions and transformation. Further, this is an energy of a triple closing. So big completion. And actually, it's more of a quadruple closing. Because like I said, we have the full moon. That's one closing. It's a lunar eclipse. That amplifies the closing. We've got a Scorpio stellium. Scorpio deals with endings. That's the triplicate closing. And then this is the last eclipse on the Taurus-Scorpio eclipse axis, and this makes it a quadruple closing. Okay. You may have even had something occur for you 4 times since 2021, or like 3 times that like you're in a situation, you're dealing with a circumstance, you're noticing that this is like the 3rd time around with it, or the 4th time around with it since 2020, only to see like, oh, okay, this is a pattern, and to really look at it and say, enough. And doing what must be done to bring things to full completion. With this is an exposure of any systemic roots to the pattern with Juno and Venus in Virgo here. Virgo can really deal with systems or patterns in particular as an earth sign. And trying this eclipse, Juno in particular is having a conversation with the eclipse through the trine. Venus specifically can deal with attachments in the shadow, or toxic, imbalanced agreements. That's that Virgo Juno, and Juno in Virgo can be an agreement where the energy is one of like the shadow side of Virgo, like service to the point of enslavement or martyrdom. And servitude. In ancient astrology, Virgo was the sign that dealt with enslavement. In modern astrology, we look to Virgo, where Virgo sits in the chart, and that's where we can see a person may have some imbalanced power dynamics. In the teacher-student relationship, we can see the doctor-patient relationship covered under Virgo, master-apprentice, mentor-mentee. All of that is Virgo's domain. But with this eclipse really signaling closure, and Juno being about partnerships and agreements, specifically the marriage contract, but it can be other kinds of agreements as well, there's a closure to where things have been imbalanced, in particular at this time. Okay. Pluto wrapping up his transit in Capricorn, like I was saying here, not directly related to this eclipse, but loosely by 90-degree angle, is also dredging up where there has been imbalanced power dynamics systematically and exposing this so it can get rectified, as Capricorn, the sign that Pluto's sitting in, is all about institutions, governments, systems, groups that are like businesses. In this energy, we can see worldwide where there have been abuses of power that have been systematic, meaning multiple groups of people working together to uphold a system that benefits only them instead of equitably supporting everyone. This is a moment when the exposure of these dynamics in your personal life and for us as a collective comes to the surface. Anywhere you've been disempowered by personal agreement or through any amount of systematic oppression is going to surface now and ask us to reinvest in ourselves, realign with ourselves, recommit to ending cycles of participating in our own devaluation, our own oppression, our own disempowerment. Okay. And the situation in, I'd be remiss not to talk about it. The situation in the Gaza Strip with, the Israeli government and the Hamas terrorist group there. That situation comes to mind in this. There have been many, many years that this conflict has been going on. However, this is probably one of the first times we've seen the conflict boil over into kind of worldwide news in a way that includes the history of the Palestinian people and what they've been through living in what the UN is now beginning to recognize as an apartheid state and the oppression that they've been living under. Now, no one here, myself included, is condoning, acts of violence as the solution to your problems. And simultaneously, with the surfacing of, the types of oppression this group of people have been under for so long, there's now even people from Israel coming out and saying, hey, like, this isn't right. Like, we've got to find a better solution for the way we are interacting together. And this is kind of worldwide. We're seeing this, the call for the collective call for peace. We've even seen, and the United States is extraordinarily, it's picked a definitive side in this kind of circumstance historically. But we're even seeing the United States president, come out in favor of saying, like, look, Israel, maybe you want to consider some restraint in your response. A scorched earth response isn't what's needed here. And so we're seeing this kind of collective movement toward an understanding of where there have been either disempowerment or lack of rights. No violence isn't the answer. And simultaneously, we've got to come up with new solutions all the way around for all parties involved. Okay. So this, in the collective energy is also kind of creating a sense of, like, I want to say maybe some heaviness, specifically because this is a moment in time that really demands an about face or a turn in kind of policy or the way power is rendered behaviorally in the right now time. And when there's momentum in a particular direction that's been there for so long, turning the ship really requires slowing down before you can pick up speed in a new direction. And that's what we're all kind of seeing at the micro and then at the macrocosm. A big change about to occur already in its unfoldment, and a slowing down of the momentum of the way things have always been so that we can move things in a new direction. Okay. So it is empowering. It's really good to see, kind of more people calling for peace rather than being invested in a singular side. It's also really good to see like the surfacing from, where there's been imbalanced power dynamics that's been really hidden, that information coming to the forefront so that, there's greater international concern for how do we find an equitable solution, not just a solution that, stifles or stills the violence that's going on. We want a solution that actually supports thriving for all people involved. So we're moving in that direction with the North Node in Aries and the eclipses to come. We just got to get through this period of time where we've got revelation, something has to change. How do we change it? And getting into conversation and action around it. Okay. This energy is really presenting as like I said, a moment of truth. What can no longer be tolerated won't be. And that's really one of the gifts of scorpionic energy. And we've got a large Scorpio stellium here. Any person I've ever read for who has a Scorpio stellium in their chart, meaning 3 or more luminaries, in particular the personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mars, Venus, Mercury. Whenever I've seen a Scorpio stellium in a person's chart, I know I'm looking at a person whose capacity to handle long-term or deep-seated pain and suffering and toxicity is extraordinarily high. Scorpio's capacity to be with the experience that collectively we might call darkness or pain is higher than any of the other 12 signs or 11 signs of the zodiac. Okay. Because of this, when we get into a scorpionic moment, like we all are now collectively, and there is the scorpionic energy saying enough, like we can't continue forward this way, wherever that's happening in your life right now, it's because you really have done all that you could, and there must be change at this time. We cannot go on in that particular area of life, wherever Scorpio sits in your chart. There's something's got to give. We can't go on in the way that we've been. And so this particular transitional moment at the microcosm is really showing us, okay, I've done what I could do. Evolution has to happen from here. The rock bottom has happened. The only way I can go from here is up. And so there's something empowering about knowing that collectively we've really kind of hit that point, and now we've got to turn in the other direction. So for those of you who have felt a bit discouraged, I really want to encourage you to remember all things move in cycles. It is never winter forever. Spring does eventually come. This time it's going to need to come by our own hand and our own participation. Okay. Especially because with the North Node and this lunar eclipse, the moon here in Taurus, this is really going to come out of a change in the way that we are valuing ourselves. Taurus is our sign that deals with self-worth, self-esteem, self-value. It also deals with straight up paychecks, like money you get from like earning. So this lunar eclipse is going to illuminate cracks in our identity and authority over our lives, where we've allowed our identity to be back to the microcosm here, rooted in rejection or unworthiness or powerlessness or pain, suffering, abandonment, victimhood, anger, resentment patterns, entitlement. All of this is like shadow side and opposite to Taurus energy itself. It's the anti-Taurus energy, and where we have had pieces of our identity rooted in those, all of this is going to be reflected back to us as our role in the circumstances that we wish to change. So the clearer we are going into this, that yes, we have power. Yes, we have choices in our circumstances. And at this time, the easier it's going to be to navigate the energies active through the next 90 days, because we're at the peak now. A lot of you are like, how do eclipses work? And I've even had a few people say, well, I'm thinking about doing this, but should I avoid it, on the eclipse day, the lunar eclipse day? And I'm like, I want to show you guys, like, vibrationally how this works and how to understand it. It goes like this. This is kind of our eclipse energy here. It works in a window. Here, at the height of the window, this is 30 days before, 30 days after. We are in that 30 days before now. Will be 30 days after, leading to November 28th. Here, this is 60 days before, 60 days after. It's less intense, but we're still in the energy. Here is 90 days, okay? Still in the energy, but at the beginning, it's just building, and at the end, it's waning, okay? So all the way through January 28th, this energy is actually active. Well, we might see some of the changes unfolding that late, depending upon where we're at in our relationship to making the necessary changes. And so for some of us, the changes are going to be a process. They can't just happen overnight or all at once. Some of you have needed to walk into making the changes gradually, which makes total sense, because some of these are changes that you guys are undoing after decades, like my client I spoke about earlier, of things moving in one way, that it would take, roughly, 6 months. That's not a big ask if it's been a decades long problem for you. So let it take the time it takes, but don't rest on your laurels. Be actively engaged in the process of making the decisions for change. Okay. Remember, this energy overlaps with the new beginning energy of the last eclipse that was 2 weeks ago, and also opened 90 days prior to now. That one was all about new beginnings, new cycles, new contracts, new agreements, new negotiations with existing connections, relationships, and partners. So together, these two eclipses are working as an open door and a closed door, forcing our hand to stand up for ourselves, take control of our destiny, direct our life onto our higher path, and where we can, help others self-actualize and do the same. Okay. This is a turning point. We go up from here, or we repeat. Whatever is uncomfortable for us now is uncomfortable with tremendous purpose. It's so that we can see with clarity that we are, in fact, the cause, so we can stop unconsciously swimming in a sea of effects and then wondering why we're drowning. Huge opportunity to grow in this. Huge opportunity. So again, if you're like, I see the issue, or I have a sense of the issue, or I can identify the pattern, like every time I try to step forward, Kay, I feel like I get yanked back. What do I do? How do I work with this? Where is the problem? Help me find the solution. Your chart is your personal blueprint. It holds the secrets to both your shadow and your light, your challenges and your triumphs. And so if you would like to have a look at your blueprint so that you can overcome this and not have to repeat this cycle, definitely book with me over at kmonastro.com. Link is below this video. As I mentioned earlier, I strongly recommend an hour if you can swing it at this time. We've got this energy in effect through January, the end of January. We're in the peak period now through the end of November, and there's definitely time in my calendar in November. So let's talk while the energy is hot, so you can really work with it. Because the sooner you start to put your hands in the clay and make the shifts, the faster the heaviness in your own life is going to start to dissipate. Okay. And we could all use anyone in the collective being lighter at this time. So normally this would be the time when I would, get into some of the other energies, but I'm going to be honest, as I really studied this chart, all of the other energies seem to be singing to this melody, singing, reinforcing this song and this message. So rather than go into astrological specifics, I figured it would be an empowering time to tell you how some of my clients have been using some of this energy so that you can understand how personal it is, how unique it is, that it's not going to be the same for you as it is for everyone else, and maybe, shed some light on where your options are. So the first client that I've got was someone who, inside of her chart, she had an experience many years ago in the, for those of you who recognize yourself as twin flames, divine counterparts, pick your label. She met someone she identified in that category of intense love connection years ago. So at the beginning of the last cycle, so that would have been around 2015. There were strong emotions, and she was really trying to sort them out and really figure out what she felt about what was going on. And right as she was coming to terms with it all, her twin announced, "Here's my new partner. I am now in a relationship with this person, with someone else," before she had the chance to say, "Hey, I've got feelings here." And that shut her down. It really stopped her from being able to communicate more or stay in connection with her love interest for 7.5, 8 years at this point. It's been nearly a decade. My client has a configuration in her chart that indicates that strong emotions are a part of her configuration and makeup, and they can sometimes overwhelm her. She can get stilled or silenced by these emotions and live in patterns of inertia if she's not given enough time to feel what she feels and then take an action on them. Sometimes people can move faster than and she might need more time than what people are aware that she needs. And so the jump off point for she and I's conversation, she was like, "Hey, what do you think about, look at my chart, K Moon, is now a good time to reach out? Given the solar eclipse and this new beginning, this relationship resurrection energy from October 14th is now a good time to reach out." And I explained, and she was asking, I think this might be going on in my person's life. I want to make sure that, when I reach out, maybe this is my chance to step up to the plate and really get things going again. I said, "Listen, as long as your person hasn't red lighted you or yellow lighted you," and a red light is, "Hey, please don't talk to me anymore. Line in the sand, strong boundary up, go away. I can't have communication with you." As long as they haven't given you a red light or a yellow light. Yellow light is, y'all were fine, communication was great, and then they started delaying responses, withdrawing, not responding at all, and you'd have to send 3 or 4 different messages before you got a singular response. As long as there's been no red lights or yellow lights, then it's assuming the light is green and you can reach out anytime. That's thing number one. But then thing number two is this: if you've been activated by divine love, when you reach out, it's important to understand, here's that Taurus thing, self-worth, self-esteem, self-value. You are reaching out because of who you want to be in the face of love, inviting you to dance with it, not for what kind of response you're going to get from the other person. Who knows where the other person is or isn't in their life? It's been how long since y'all really spoke, truly connected? I mean, we could speculate, we could guess, you could get readings on it, but that's not really gonna help you when it comes to mustering up the courage to step in to the dance. There's gonna come a day when there's no more time left. There's no more breathing left on earth. There's no more new decisions you can make. You're good. We will all hit that moment when time is up. The opportunity to have changed thing has passed. At that moment, that is when you want to be able to look and see, dang, divine love knocked on my door. And I responded to it with everything I had, the best way I knew how. And I didn't sit it out. I left it all on the dance floor. That's the moment when you want to be able to look back and say, I have no regrets, regardless of how the other person chose to show up or not. You stood for love. So in your reaching out, that's the place it has to come from. It needs to come from the place of you creating a version of yourself that when you look back on your life, you would applaud for you and the way you showed up. Not, you puppeteered and manipulated the puppet strings to get the person to respond at a certain way because you aligned the energies with the moon at the certain eclipse. No, that is not it. Okay. So I share that because, it was when that really sank in for my client, and my client's kind of velocity to action on things can be a little bit delayed because there's big emotions. She's moving a really big bus in this lifetime emotionally. She's not coming in with one of these little smart cars that are like miniature. She's coming in with like a Mack truck emotionally. When that really landed for my client, and I was shocked at how fast it landed, within 24 hours, she decided to reach out to her person. It was her person's birthday. She initially had like messaged on social media, didn't get a response, and she was thinking about finding another platform to message on. I was like, listen, if you really want to connect, then just connect. Pick up the phone and call. If there's been no red light, no yellow light, just call. She picked up the phone. She called. After a 20-minute conversation, after all this silence, my client got an invitation from her person to hang out in person. Breakthrough. In one moment, one decision, everything can change for us off of a single choice, whether it's love or whether it's money for you. Once you can see your blind spot and the way it's been holding you back, once you can see your pattern, you can make the new choice. And in my client situation, it was this kind of like belief that, there's some kind of way that, she could perfect this. And maybe the big emotions wouldn't be there. She could process them to a point where she wouldn't be afraid. And that's just not the case. And for her and her chart, the way it was set up, learning how to dance afraid was part of what it was going to take. And the minute she made the decision, I'm worth dancing afraid, was the minute things changed for her. Just like that. I'll give you guys a completely separate example. I've got another client, my second client here, who has been considering a divorce after years in a marriage where there has been some pretty significant verbal violence. and emotional violence. The no physical violence, but definitively the things that were being said and done and the way she was being treated. If you Googled these actions and behaviors from a spouse, we would call it emotional abuse. It's been so bad that she's, her and her spouse, they're now sleeping in separate rooms. The kids are so afraid that the kids are now sleeping with her at night. And she was considering staying in the marriage because she didn't want her kids to grow up without their father. And she felt extraordinary guilt about being someone who takes their children's father away and creating a setting where her children might have no relationship with their father. Now, the thing about the situation, if you're not in it, all of our situations for each of us, they all have a blind spot. It's difficult to be able to see it. But for all of us in our situations, sometimes we're missing what's right in front of our face. And in her circumstance, the fear that her spouse was creating in the house is what has been causing the children to already have no relationship with the father, and they're all living under the same roof. So I took a look at her chart. I could see some stuff about her childhood based on the chart. And I asked, is this a pattern that you maybe grew up in? And she explained, yeah, my mom was verbally violent when I was growing up. And I asked, did you ever, as a kid, wish maybe your dad would step in, step up, get divorced, take you away? And she confirmed, yeah, all the time. So I asked her to imagine how her own kids feel right now, going through what she went through and what they might want given what she wanted. And I reminded her that since she lives in the United States, even after a divorce, given current laws, the courts will mandate her children to see their father. She won't on her own be able to end their relationship with their dad after the divorce. And I invited her to consider her own inner child based on what I saw in the chart, as well now that her adult can take care of her inner child and her actual kids. What does her inner child need her to do? And so when we put all the different pieces together, these eclipses were impacting her fourth house, family, home, and roots. They were impacting her marriage house, and they were also impacting her sixth house of like things that have power over us externally. We put all these pieces together and she could clearly see that she hadn't considered all of these things. She got stuck at the fear, and that's what this Pluto thing is doing. It's inviting us all to dance with our fear at the tail end of Capricorn, our existing structures to our life. Pick up our power, that's Pluto, and really close out cycles here in Scorpio that have been devaluing us. Lunar eclipse in Taurus, close out these cycles that are devaluing us and step into some new negotiation around our relationship. And so she hadn't considered these things. And it, when she really considered, like, wow, yeah, the way their father is verbally violent, it's preventing them from having a relationship with him in the first place. Like, they actually might have a better chance if, he's not in that state every time he sees them. As she started to get some of this and move her life in new directions, like you could see the blossoming and the understanding, okay, now I know what I need to do. Now I know I'm not to blame. I know my job is to be the hero that I didn't have and create safety for my kids and for myself. And so I'm really proud of her insights and her breakthroughs and her realizations. Like this kind of energy that we're seeing here is inviting all of us to find where we need to be the hero to ourselves, where we need to be the heroine in our own story. We need to be kind of the superhero that we've been waiting for from the world. This energy is our invitation to step into that for ourselves. So I'm really inspired by that. She really kind of blew me away how quickly she moved into clarity around this. But you see it now, how easy it may be for us to use this energy to double down and reinforce a pattern of disempowerment, guys. Y'all see it, right? So often we don't even realize this stuff. And this is where a reading can help, because in a chart, all of the energies are both light and shadow, but it's in the knowing the pattern you want to outgrow and looking at it against your chart. That's where we can pinpoint which patterns are being used in the shadow, and we can use your chart to see your personal strategy for moving this into the light at this time. Okay. For those of you who know Harry Potter, this energy is very reminiscent of the book or the movie where, Harry really thought that there was some time travel involved in that movie. And there was a moment where he was deeply in danger of losing his life. And someone came and created, fought off the demons, so to speak, for him. He thought that was his father that did it, but his father's dead. And so through the course of the storyline, we found out in the time travel that he realized no one was coming to save him but him. And so he did what he needed to do to save himself by going back in time and fighting off the demons for himself. And it's this kind of energy that this full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse is giving us opportunity to do. Last story, and I'm super proud of this person as well, really inspired. Like, she's just so close to my heart. Like, I'm getting teary thinking about it. So this woman has, she's worked for, I would say, I think 17 years, 18 years in a nonprofit organization, because she just really believed in the mission. She wanted to be of service, and she had been keeping the books for this nonprofit organization. And it was kind of a small ragtag organization when she joined. But over the course of almost like 2 decades that she's been there, the organization has grown significantly. And she's just been a contributing member, a little bit in the background, keeping the wheels churning, keeping them financially in good standing. And so, she's at the age now where she was clear she wanted to retire. She didn't want to keep doing it anymore. And so it's been like a 3-year process with the organization, letting them know, hey, my husband and I are going to retire. We're going to relocate. Hey, we're moving. Hey, yes, I can work remotely, but we really need to find a replacement for me because I can't be there in the ways that you've needed me to be. And the organization hasn't done an amazing job at really just kind of owning that this woman has been doing, kind of the work of 3 people full time for the work of 1 person part time in terms of the pay that she was getting. And so she's made the relocation. Now she's working remotely. They were listening enough and she was advocating enough as this eclipse cycle started for them to hire a replacement for her that was on the ground in their location. So she was starting to get some relief, only for things to not work out with that person, and that person quit. So now they're back at square one. She continued to press, continued to advocate. It's been a slow process over the eclipse cycle. And they finally have been listening a little bit more, and they hired 2 people to take on her job. So she's now in the process of training these 2 people so that she can officially retire. She doesn't want to do this anymore. And so, there has been it's been a real moment of reckoning, both for the organization to get revelation and insight that this woman, for the pay of a part-time person, has been doing the work of 3 total people. They're now about to spread it out over 2. But at the close of this year, she's been telling them, hey, I got, 4 more months left and I'm done. I got 3 more months left and I'm done. I'm not going to be here. You got to figure this out. And in doing that, she's really exposed to them. Wow. We didn't realize how reliant we were on her and how much she's been picking up the slack for a very disorganized financial situation that we outgrew, 10 years ago, 7 years ago. And she's just been making it work quietly and in the background. And so hearing her start the process of disentangling herself from their financial miasma and really self-advocate for them to be more independent of her and for her to get her time back and value her time in a way that really serves her has just been I've been cheerleading the process, but trying not to push. And I'm just so proud and inspired that she's finally she's got 90 days left, 60 days left. The end is in sight for her. And so this, for her, it's been a real deepening and understanding where, sometimes we can get caught in a pattern of believing that we're the solution or the saviors to people's patterns of dysfunction, when in reality, the dysfunction only stays dysfunctional because we're the glue holding it together. I know you guys have seen these memes where they say that, there's, I don't even want to reference that, never mind. But when we leave, there can be a real fear. If I leave, it's going to fall apart. But sometimes that thing falling apart is the best thing that can happen to it, because at least there's a shot at it, the problem being owned, that our presence was mollifying and covering up. This energy invites us to step out of being the band-aid to other people's bullet wounds so that they can get real help and own where there's a real problem that needs some undivided, real attention and a real solution, which was the circumstance that her job was in. But it really required her to shift her own valuing of herself and her time for them to begin to value her and the role enough to, take it very seriously. So we are the cause. Our life is the effect. And if you're needing support breaking through a long-term pattern and putting a permanent end to a pattern of disempowerment, or just plain and simple feeling locked out of what you desire, that's Taurus. I've been trying for this for years, K-Moon, but I can't seem to figure out how to get there. If you've been feeling locked out of one of your desires, then jump on my calendar. Like I said, this energy is active through the end of January. I would love to help you get the breakthrough that will get you in a new cycle. This full moon in Taurus lunar eclipse is really, I'm dedicating it to the first divine feminine in my life, my mom, because that last story was about her. And I'm just really proud of her. And for all of you who are making new choices and new decisions out here where it's been hard and there's been, months, years, or decades of momentum in a direction that hasn't served you, I really applaud you for making the decisions to do a new damn thing, because it is a new damn day. I love you guys. Thank you so much for all of your watches, your likes, and your subscribes. And if you want to chat, you know where to find me. If you want to leave a comment below about what you're overcoming and stepping out of, may empower somebody else to hear some other stories of how this energy is working. That would be amazing. Let's do first look, guys. Let's have a look at where the energy heads from here, shall we? Amazing, guys. Super excited for all of the growth that I'm just seeing happening. Like, I honestly feel like us becoming our own heroes is kind of like the theme of this season, and I'm just so inspired by it. Let's have a look here at the new moon in Scorpio. Here it is, November 13th, 2023 at 4:27 a.m. If you happen to be on the eastern seaboard of the United States, 20th degree of Scorpio. This is my first impression of it. We've got it conjunct Mars and Ceres here. Okay, that's interesting. Opposite Uranus, also fascinating. And we've got a trine to Neptune. And we've got, okay, that's it. That's what I got. Okay, with Uranus and Neptune in the conversation as heavily as they are, in addition to Mars, and Mars being in one of its home signs, Mars governs both Aries and Scorpio. There's a lot of activity that is coming with the following 2 weeks post the eclipse that we are having on the 28th. Mars is a sign of action. Again, Scorpio is all about closings and completions and the resurrection cycle. We've got Neptune in the mix, providing a bit of spiritual understanding, perhaps for why things are going the way they are going, why things are unfolding the way they are unfolding. And we've got Uranus in the mix. Ooh, okay. So here's the thing. There are times when the universe will. Have you guys ever seen, those parents who maybe are out at the grocery store and the children are kind of like running wild and the parents are trying to rein them in before they have to dole out consequences? And before the consequences come, the parents do this countdown thing where they're like, okay, you got to do this now before I get to this number, you know, 3, 2, 1. And when they get to 1, that's when you know it's about to go down. And you don't want to be that child when the parent gets to 1. You don't even want to be anywhere near that scene. That's what this kind of reads like, to be completely honest. That's not funny. I'm funny. I mean, I'm laughing because I'm very uncomfortable with the energy. But this reads a bit like, look, if you don't let go, that's okay. And I've seen this a few times during the Taurus-Scorpio eclipse cycle, because like I said, that eclipse cycle is all about closings, completions, and endings. And this isn't an eclipse, but it certainly reads like a completion, even though it's a new moon in Scorpio. Scorpio is about completion. Uranus is the hand of the divine and divine change. It's very much parental energies saying, kind of like us in our tantrum, maybe going, no, I won't let it go. Over my dead body, you'll have to pull it out of my cold, dead hands. And the universe goes, fine, have it your way. And you lose some fingers while holding on to the thing that you needed to let go of. People, let go, please. I like y'all having fingers. I think y'all like it too. Please let go of whatever's being toxic for you at this time. Do it before the new moon in Scorpio, because this looks intense. very intense. It looks a bit like now's about the time where if we're still holding on to things that aren't serving us, consequences start to come out, and they are unexpected, unintended, things we did not think would happen. With Uranus in opposition, don't get me wrong, like, listen, the universe is benevolent and kind, and it is working with us to help us grow. But where we're getting in our own way, this is a bit of the cosmic knock it off. The consequences to bring us into alignment with what we're supposed to be doing at this time. So, um, you know, listen, I get it. I have my own internal tantrums about things I struggle to let go with. Um, for real, it's real out here in these, humanity streets right now. It is really real. And simultaneously, you don't want to be caught in this energy holding on to stuff that has not been good for you. You want to have had the conversations to make the change, to renegotiate what needs to be renegotiated. You want to be in the position where you've at least made an effort, so that you're not getting caught up in an energy of, you know, kind of divine course correction or the divine forcing your hand in a way that is even more uncomfortable than things already are. And like I said, people with Scorpio stelliums, like, I already know y'all have it in you to be uncomfortable. You don't have to be more uncomfortable than what it is. It can be less uncomfortable. People, let's choose ease. Yeah, let's choose ease. But yeah, this looks like it is the initiation, new moon beginning of a season of unexpected Uranus actions, Mars, that force our hand in letting go, Neptune. All right. Wow. Okay. Well, that put me on notice for some things. Like, hey, Moon, you need to be done with this, that, and the following by this date, boo. Get it done. Do not dilly dally any longer, because your girl has been out here like, maybe I have time. The universe always gives second chances. And I clearly see it in this chart. The universe is up to some Miss Thing. You've had second chances 8 times. Knock it off. So there it is. That's what I got. First look, new moon in Scorpio is coming for all of us. And it's going to be great because it's going to help us all get on track with where it is we know we are headed. There's a season of significant and tremendous blessings coming pretty much exactly 6 months from this. When we have March, I think it's May. So it's actually 8 months from this. Directly opposite this particular new moon in Scorpio in May, we're going to have a grand conjunction of Jupiter, Uranus, the Sun, and Venus in May. And that's a season where tremendous blessings will come in if we can do the work we're supposed to be doing now. Okay. Yeah. So something to look forward to while we all step into a period of deeper release and completion. Resurrection is upon us, but we gotta face the ending first. Okay. All right, guys, I love you. If you need to chat with me, you need some support figuring out the pattern so that you're capable of not letting it recycle itself into a new season in your life, hit me up at kmoonastro.com. We can read in November, lock this in, get you that new patterning so that, you're on the up and up as we move into the close of the year. Take great care and bye for now.